All right, okay, I know how to use this. I'm talking to the sun now. So we're going to try and see if we can get you in then. Come on. Come on then, let's go.
If you like to have badge to enter inside, maybe we can do for you library badge.
Visitor badge.
Library card to enter to inside. To use the library inside.
We will see. We will do
He
everything
can
we can do.
Similar this badge for here to enter also.
Yeah.
Came to listen if you like.
Yeah, sure, we'll try and get her a badge. Okay. Well, you guys try then, okay? Because I've got no pull at this place.
No, we go together
Hassan
now.
told me, Naji, that he will work about this. Therefore, we will go now inside.
I see, okay.
See Naji what he can do.
It's not a big deal.
If you don't have another plane to go inside Geneva to take tour or to do something.
No, I have to be here. I came for this.
Okay, good.
I came a long way from the other side of the world. I'm professional radiation specialist for 3 years in Baltic region.
This has got to go through the machine, so you've got to switch it off.
Yeah, don't switch off.
You have to switch it off so it goes through the machine.
You
can't
can put
take
it
it
in the
through
machine.
there. Well, not while it's running.
Yeah, why not?
And I'm the legal expert of International Educational Development Association of Humanitarian Lawyers. And I am very pleased that our association has co-sponsored this event. I'm sorry for the delay. We've been waiting for a few people who had indicated they would be here. But I think we'll begin now. We have an extraordinarily interesting pair of people to present information to you, and I want to have some chance for some response and then some impassioned plea type discussions. I got involved in depleted uranium from various sources, including from the wife of the former president of Greece, Margarita Papandreou. We presented the statistics, the information, the tragedy of what was going on at the first Gulf War in 1996 here in Geneva. And I'm pleased that that very year the United Nations Subcommission agreed with our assessment that depleted uranium weaponry was already illegal and therefore didn't need a specific treaty ban, and initiated a procedure to, in a sense, flesh out why depleted uranium and some of the other bad weapons then on the table and in use were, by law, operation of humanitarian or armed conflict law, the law of weaponry, already illegal. With some maneuvering, particularly from my government, I'm from the United States, that tried to derail that initiative, we finally did manage to get a rapporteur nominated from the United Nations Subcommission who wrote reports as intended on these issues. In a sense, what I had set out to show was already accomplished in that the independent experts on these issues from around the world had said, had decided, had decreed vis-a-vis resolutions, reports, etc., that these weapons are already illegal. Therefore, the question became what to do about the fact that countries, in particular one, are using weapons with depleted uranium. The discussions at the United Nations Forum, as is on this floor here, were very alarming to some of the countries that had in fact purchased depleted uranium weapons or had them foisted upon them by the United States. So at present we have both India and Pakistan, already a tinderbox, with depleted uranium weapons. We know Russia has them, we know China has them, we know Israel has them, and several other countries have them. But with some exceptions, there does not appear that any of the other countries that have these weapons have used them after we had discussions and testimony on the floor, as is upstairs, about the effect of depleted uranium. When the United States military forces attacked the hospital in Fallujah in 2004, I was furious because hospitals, regardless of what weapons you use, hospitals are off limits. You cannot attack a hospital. I brought an action at the Organization of American States against the United States on that issue. They had it under review, and then because the Bush administration was thumbing its nose at that forum, I did not want that case to be a case which showed to the rest of the hemisphere where the OAS sits that none of the other countries need to comply because the big superpower in the area is not. There were several issues that I, in fact, won at the OAS on this case and on an earlier case, which is that a country can be liable for violations of human rights outside, that it engages in outside its own borders. This is a very, very important victory. But I basically told the Organization of American States to put on hold the rest of the Fallujah case because I was afraid that the United States would flaunt its non-compliance with anything the OAS said. And in effect, the damage was done, and I was looking for different kinds of remedies that maybe could have an effect, and in particular continuing to alert the international community. The people, I was going to say on both sides of me, the people on my left are people who have done phenomenal work, both in the scientific aspects of depleted uranium and in the day-to-day results of depleted uranium use on civilians and people. So I will, without further ado, introduce them. We will begin with Dr. Christopher Busby, who's on my far left. He's visiting professor at the University of Ulster. He's scientific director of the Cancer and Birth Defect Foundation in the UK. And if there's anyone in the Western world that has done more on the science of uranium and depleted uranium, I don't know them. So you are very honored to have for you today Dr. Busby.
Press something?
Voilà, that's it.
That's on,
Yeah.
okay, that's right. Yes, hello. I'm going to talk about a study that we did in Fallujah. I have been involved in the study of depleted uranium probably since 1996, and I visited Iraq in 2000 and Kosovo in 2001 and measured this material in the field. And also I've done a considerable amount of research on the health effects and the mechanism of the health effects. Now this Fallujah study, which I'm going to talk about today, was published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. The reason that we undertook this study was that there was a lot of information coming out of Iraq, and has been since about 2000, of increases in birth defects and cancer in populations in Iraq. In fact, that's why I went to Iraq in 2000 with Al Jazeera to visit the hospitals and to make measurements and to see for myself what I thought the situation was. Now, despite all of this evidence coming out of Iraq from ordinary people and from doctors, there has been no systematic scientific study of the situation. And I was asked by Malak Hamdan if there was a way in which we could investigate this scientifically, and I said, of course there is. And we went and looked at the people of Fallujah, because that was an area where these problems seem to be appearing at the highest level. So we did this study in Fallujah this last year. This is what we did. We organized a team of interviewers to visit about 700 homes, random homes in the town, between January and February 2010. And we asked simple questions to get the base population of the people living in that area. There were about 4,850 people living at the addresses. And we got their names and their identification numbers, and also the numbers and types of cancer reported in the previous 5 years, back to 2004, the number of infant deaths, and we also got the number of miscarriages and a number of other diseases and so on, which we didn't include in the initial report, and we may do another report when we've gone back and analysed more of this. But the important thing was to see if the reports of increases in cancer and infant mortality were based on fact. So we compared the sex and age-specific cancer rates in the study group of 4,800 people over that period of time to the rates in Egypt, and also the rates in Jordan. So we're using those as a baseline in order to see whether there were any increases in these people in this group, this study group in Fallujah. Now, in the 5-year period to 2010, we did find an enormously high level of cancer, an absolutely extraordinarily high level of cancer. And I've never seen anything like this in any of the studies I've ever done. And I'll tell you what we found. First of all, there were 62 cases of cancer in this group of 4,800 people. And you have to remember that cancer is basically a disease of old age. So although there are 4,800 people, most of these people are young people. And in 62 cases gave us a relative risk, that is, that there were about 4 times the total number of cancer cases than there would have been if this had been the Egyptian or the Jordanian rates. But this included 16 cases of childhood cancer, aged 0 to 14, which gave us a relative risk of 12.6. These are all highly significant. That CI means the confidence interval, so we know that the real number is between about 5 and 32. So there's 12 times the childhood cancer there. Now this is an enormously high level of childhood cancer. In the UK there was a public inquiry when it turned out that there was a childhood cancer rate of just 9 times near the nuclear reprocessing plant in Sellafield. And the highest risks we found were in leukemias, and in the age group 0 to 34 we found 38 times the expected number. This is astonishing. 38 times the expected number of leukemias. This is higher than anything that has been seen in I think probably the whole of the history of epidemiology. The highest rates of leukemia so far were found in the survivors of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings, and those levels were about maybe 17, 20 times the expected number. And here we've got almost 40 times the expected number. And we also found high levels of lymphoma, breast cancer. You can see there that there's a relative risk of about 10 for breast cancer, so 10 times the breast cancers you'd expect if the population was based on the Egyptian rates, and also brain tumors. Then we looked at infant deaths. And when we looked at infant deaths, we found 34 deaths in this age group over the period, and that gives a rate of 80 per 1,000 births. In the West, here probably in Switzerland, I doubt if the rates of infant mortality are greater than about 6 per 1,000 births. So we've got 80 here, and in Egypt there was 19.8. So it's about 4 times the infant mortality rates than they find in Egypt. And of course it's much lower in Kuwait too, where they have a much better health system. But it's getting worse. So in the most recent few months, this rate increased to 130 per 1,000 births. So whatever's happening there, it's getting worse. Then, most important, we found the sex ratio. Now, the sex ratio is the number of boys born to 1,000 girls. And this is normally in human populations all over the world. In a human population where people are not exposed to any genetic damage, you always get a rate of about 1,050 boys to every 1,000 girls. But what we found here was 860 boys were born to 1,000 girls in the population born just after 2004. Now the interesting thing here is that before 2004, the sex ratio was normal, or approximately normal. So whatever it was that happened that caused this high level of cancer, high level of infant mortality, and the sex ratio change, it occurred in 2004. This is the most important result that we had here. So we can say that whatever happened in 2004 caused a massive amount of genetic damage, and the type of genetic damage was the same as the genetic damage spectrum that was found after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but it was much worse. So how can we be sure that these results are correct? Well, firstly, we've done a lot of these studies elsewhere in the United Kingdom. I've done about 600 studies now. And in at least one of these studies, the local cancer registry came along afterwards because there was a big fuss, And they did their own study using official data and found that our results were almost exactly correct. Of course, when I say 38-fold increases in leukemia, I mean this is a number, and it may be uncertain. There may be a certain amount of uncertainty in that because there are structural problems with these sorts of studies. There's a certain amount of there are a number of problems which we discuss in the paper, and if you want to know more about this, you should look at the scientific paper which is published on the internet. And so if you type in Fallujah cancer or Fallujah Busby into Google, you'll very quickly find this paper, which is an open access paper. You can download it as a PDF, and you can study it as much as you like. And if there's any questions you have, my email is on the paper. You can contact me. Now, what can we conclude from this study? Well, what we can conclude is that the population has been exposed to an extreme level of genetic damage. We can see that the spectrum of conditions, the particular kinds of cancer, in particular the leukemias and the lymphomas, are a signal, are a sort of footprint for exposure to ionizing radiation. The spectrum is similar to the spectrum found in the atomic bomb survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the trend in sex ratio changes, as I've just said, points to an event in 2004. And before 2004, the sex ratios were normal. So what we can conclude from this study is something terrible happened in 2004, and it was an event which involved an extreme level of genetic damage. So we have to look for something that caused it. So what could this be? Well, first of all, the spectrum of genetic damage conditions points, as I said, to some ionizing radiation exposure of some kind. In principle, it could also have been caused by a very powerful chemical mutagen like mustard gas. But mustard gas is a very long-lived substance in the environment, and it would certainly still be there and easy to detect. And also it would have left other sorts of evidence, because mustard gas causes a quite unmistakable type of damage in human beings. You get blistering, and you get conditions that doctors can easily diagnose as due to mustard gas. And people have talked about the use of white phosphorus a lot. I think this is a smoke screen, if I can use that pun. White phosphorus does not cause genetic damage. It's not a mutagen. It causes terrible burning, and it causes all sorts of conditions, but it doesn't cause genetic damage. It's not a mutagen. So what does that leave? Well, everybody says depleted uranium, but there are some problems with this interpretation. Incidentally, we did take some samples from Fallujah. We've got some soil samples which are being analysed, and they do show the presence of uranium. But I won't say too much about that, because we're doing a lot more analysis on these samples, and we're getting more samples, so we're doing more work on this, and you'll see why as I go on. There are problems with the inference that this is caused by depleted uranium, and the main problem is one that's raised very often even by the people who are concerned about depleted uranium. There's a big argument about this, because depleted uranium was first used in the 1991 Gulf War, and since then has been used in Kosovo and in Bosnia and various places, but primarily as an anti-tank weapon, a weapon for destroying armor. Now I know, because I've been there, that if you fire depleted uranium penetrators, they're called, they're like bullets, but they're just pieces of uranium, basically, like a pencil. If they hit a brick wall, or if they hit the ground, if they don't hit armor, then they don't burn, and they just are found. They just flatten out, and they're found on the ground, lying about. And the obvious question is, why would anyone use such a weapon in Fallujah when there was no armor in Fallujah? Well, one answer is they might have just wanted to do it in order to cause genetic damage. I mean, that is, just out of spite, if you like, as a radiation weapon. But that does seem to be rather a strange interpretation. And so we have another possible interpretation, and that is that there's maybe, and I think there is evidence which I'll present, that there's another uranium weapon that's being developed. And the reason we think this is because we have discovered the existence of not depleted uranium, but enriched uranium in a number of samples from different war zones. The first one I obtained from the Lebanon in 2006. And more recently I found enriched uranium in samples from Gaza. And other scientists have also found enriched uranium in the Lebanon and in other places. And what I want to say to you today is that the significance of what we're finding is potentially terrifying, and it needs to be urgently, independently followed up, because it affects everybody in the world, not just the people of Fallujah or the people of Iraq. Now, we should say something about this. The normal isotopic ratio of the two isotopes, the main isotopes that are used in uranium, U-238 and 235. There is another isotope, 234, but this doesn't have to concern us. The isotopic ratio normally is 138. So if you dig up uranium from the ground and you measure the ratio of 238 to 235, you'll always get 138. If it's above 140 and below 136, you get either depleted if it's above, and enriched or man-made if it's below. So either of these things are man-made. If you find uranium somewhere and it's got an isotopic signature of 210, you know it's man-made. If it's got an isotopic ratio of 60, you know it comes from a nuclear power station. These are man-made signatures. Now in 2006 we found in Khiam and in Beirut, in two different samples, and also, I haven't written here, but also in water samples, we found an enriched ratio of 115. And this was using two separate techniques from two separate labs. So there's absolutely no argument about this. There is enriched uranium out there. Dr. Ali Kobesi of the Lebanese Academy of Sciences took other samples which also showed enriched uranium, and United Nations Environment Programme took samples and reported no anomalies. So we don't think that the UNEP are independent in this area. I also obtained enriched uranium in Gaza with a ratio of about 120. And Randy Parrish in the UK originally reported the presence of enriched uranium in samples that he was analysing, but he refused to say where they were from when we were on the Ministry of Defence Depleted Uranium Oversight Board. So we have to ask the question, why is enriched uranium turning up in these places? Now, the reason we have to ask this is because enriched uranium is very expensive. I mean, it's not cheap stuff. It takes a lot of energy to produce enriched uranium, and they use it as a fuel for nuclear power stations. And to use it as a weapon is like shooting your enemy with dynamite. So there are a number of questions. Why are we finding enriched uranium? Some people have suggested that it's a cover-up for the use of depleted uranium. Other people suggest it might be a component of a new weapon or the product of a new weapon. And of course there might be an explanation that nobody's thought about. Now, as soon as we think about new weapon, we have to realize that since 2003, in Lebanon and in Gaza, some completely new types of injuries have been reported in casualties. Injuries that doctors who are accustomed to treating war casualties have never seen before. The Iraqi troops in Baghdad airport, and these were Saddam Hussein's crack troops, you have to remember. There was going to be a huge fight there, and everyone was expecting the Americans to take a lot of casualties. Actually were reported found dead in their defensive positions without any real battle being fought. The United States also refused to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency into Iraq with radiation measuring equipment after the 2003 Gulf War, which is very strange because the Gulf War was fought, the 2003 war was fought on the idea that there were weapons of mass destruction, that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons. And you would expect the IAEA to come in there and check on that, but they were not allowed in for 6 months. And also, the Iraqis tell me, many Iraqis have told me that the United States cleared up the surface soil in all of the places where these weapons had been used and trucked it out into the desert so that nobody could come and measure anything in this soil afterwards. And in fact, other people have noticed this, and a new weapons group of scientists has been formed based in Italy and being run by Paola Manduca. So how could enriched uranium be involved in such a weapon? Okay, I haven't got much time, but I'm going to just quickly say that there are a number of ways in which enriched uranium can be involved. They could make if you dissolve hydrogen in uranium, you can produce a thermobaric blast weapon. But there is a suggestion by a number of scientists that a new kind of atomic weapon has been developed involving low-yield cold fusion. If you dissolve deuterium, heavy hydrogen, into depleted uranium powder or into enriched uranium powder, you get a neutron bomb. You get you get a bomb which is small, which can be used as anti-personnel and can produce neutrons and gamma radiation. And so is this crazy? Is this like the Martians have landed? Well, it's not, because we have to explain real things. We have to explain the discovery of enriched uranium, the levels of genetic damage, the strange deaths without apparent wounds, and the lengths to which the US went to clean up the evidence, also the bloodless defeat. So maybe there is such a thing. And these fusion weapons have actually been described in theory by a number of physicists, Della Guidici in Italy, and Dr. Sponen, a Frenchman in Oxford. So if such weapons exist, then it's an imperative that they be discovered and banned. And we must therefore demand that the US and Israeli military give full details of such weapons, and we must try and spend some time independently going to look for traces of these weapons. Because fusion weapons do leave a discoverable signature in the environment. But even if this isn't the case, we know from recent science that uranium aerosols alone have a huge and newly discoverable genetic effects. And this affects everybody, because this material goes all over the globe. It doesn't just stay in Iraq, it doesn't just stay in Fallujah, and recently it's been discovered that the Israelis are suffering genetic damage, and that there's been a 40% reduction in their fertility, 40% reduction in sperm count in a paper that was published in Jerusalem in the last few months. So this is a very important issue. It's an issue where the whole of the world is involved. Every single person is involved, your children and your grandchildren. We are currently destroying the genetic constituent of the human race, and of course other animals and plants and all living systems on Earth. These substances are terrifying, and we have to stop them being used. We have to find out where they're used and stop them being used. And I don't have any more time to talk about this, but that's my message to all of you people here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Darachi. He is the president of Conservation Center of Environment and Reserves in Fallujah, and he is director of Monitoring Net of Human Rights in Iraq, and he has some alternative possibilities for bringing to justice for use of weaponry that have been stymied, in a sense, purposefully at the Organization of American States. Muhamed, please.
Good morning, all. I was also added to my colleague only one thing, that I am also a former member in Fallujah Council during the December 2003 and until the June 2004. Firstly, I want to start from Fallujah history. Fallujah is a small town. If we look for the map, you will find that Fallujah is between the size of it 4 to 5 kilometers. There is 300,000 person habitant inside the city, and around Fallujah there is the 3 big village, have also 350,000 inhabitants. Totally, there will be 650,000 inhabitants in all the Fallujah. If we look also, the hospital, the main hospital of Fallujah is another side of the river, out the city. And this is one from the point we want to show that any embargo or cutting the route to this hospital can remove these 600,000 persons from any medical help. Fallujah history was known as the conservative people and religious people. They don't accept any touch for their culture or their religions. Therefore, during the British occupation in 1941, there was also a big battle in Fallujah between my people and the British against the British occupation at this time. If we look for the American policy in my city, I will give all the evidence what I thought that the international community should take look for it, because all this confirmed there is not only collective punishment for my people, but there is strategy, give it some advices or some strategy, give it from criminal side, that they continue this until now without to let any chance for peace or real investigation or help for the peace. The first problem happened in Fallujah in 23 of April 2003. As we see here, the American arrived after waited to Baghdad. They arrived to Fallujah without any fighting. They asked the Fallujah that to remove anything related with the former government. They don't get anything from anything, but after they decide don't came first time with agreement of Fallujah. After 2 days, they enter and they evacuated some schools to be military bases. The students go and for this school, go on the demonstration, peaceful demonstration, to ask Americans to go out from the school and also to stop looking by anything inside the houses of the civilian with the conservative culture for the people don't accept like this. In the first demonstration, Americans opened the fire, and as we see here, they killed many civilians and also they wounded many of them. After 2 days, the people to take these bodies to the cemetery in funeral, they also American open indiscriminate killing for this the peaceful demonstration, and they killed another civilian and wounded also some 100. With also there is some children inside this. This policy generated not only resistance, try to we look as activists of human rights. Violence made violence. Another crime is happened. Second crime it will be, it was the Fallujah people created with the mayor of Fallujah new forces to help the police in Fallujah. It was the call it Fallujah Protection Force. These people from the former military army, but the professional people, they help to prevent any looting, prevent any accident, any crimes inside, to help the police with the situation after the occupation starts. In the night, in the middle of night of 11 of September 2003, there is unknown car, BMW, came in night to shooting on the building of the mayor. The Fallujah Protection Forces following this BMW car until the road to go to Baghdad, and they see this car go inside the military base, and without do anything, they try to return to Fallujah. If we see the green hospital, Jordanian hospital beside Fallujah, in front of it, it was there is American military checkpoint. They opened the fire on the Fallujah police with Fallujah protection forces, and the fire concentrate on the well and the car of the Fallujah protection forces, and they killed more than 7, as we see the name of them, and also wounded most of them. Prevent any ambulance, anyone to came to help them from the 3 a.m. in night until the 6 a.m. in morning, because they thought they are died, until one of them it was escaping under the car. And after the sun rise, there was many people beside the accident, and the American cannot do anything, only to give them later to show these crimes. Another one about arbitrary detention and torturing and the rule of black water. It was like systematic daily crimes and violation happen against my people or the civilian. I show this story exactly because this is for my one from my neighbors behind my home. These guys, the American troops came in night in this date, 18 of June 2006, and asking this boy to show the identity card which American do for Fallujah people after the Second War. And when they know him exactly, they start shooting at him and kill him. After they take his brother, the young, 13 years, Amin, and they torturing him, but the person torturing him, he was also have barba with some rings, is not from the American military, which give us evidence this is also maybe from the Blackwater clients. We won't came for the first battle or assault on Fallujah. All of us, we remember the killing of the 4 contractors security. I was with these people in one from the meeting when I was member in the local council of Fallujah. One of the meeting, the clients of Blackwater attend this meeting. They ask us how your people should protect our troops. We reply, your mission according to Geneva Convention, you protect my people, not we protect you. He was angry and he finished the meeting directly. When we go out, we found this plenty of Blackwater. There was also this like Iraqi people, civilian with Arabian scarf or kufiya. They're using also very modern civilian cars. One of them was BMW or BMW. When they kill it, we have meeting with American commander. But in the meeting, before we go to the meeting in morning, we found in this day, 4 April 2004, we found all the gate to go inside or out, Fallujah closed. After they know we have meeting with the commander of Marines, they allow for us to go. And we found the commander of Marines prepare for us paper with some order to Fallujah people. Two, according to Geneva Convention, they should do 1, 2, 3, 4, and one of them don't go out, don't do anything. If you do anything, take a white flag to go to speak with the American soldier. And in the end, he said, tell your people, if there is if they see our soldier with abnormal clothes, with something not normal, what they see our soldier, they don't be afraid, because we have some special mission we will do against terrorists. We told him, you have ability to go inside. You arrested who you want. You do what you want. Why you want to punishing all the city? There is no any reason. He replied, this order from Pentagon exactly, and I don't have any permission to discuss it. We return to try to help our people to do what we can do. We found the first thing, they closed the 2 bridges to go to the hospital, which means prevent the 300,000 inside Fallujah to use any medical help. We try to create inside or to establish some medical center from any help from the civilian. We found during the first days that the shooting start to be from the specialist snipers on any body movement, any civilian, big one, old one, kids, women. Therefore start to arrive for our medical center, which was beside my place. Many civilians, especially from women and children, without any reason, they want only escape from some ways to go out Fallujah, and the sniper shooting on them. Another type of weapons used also in this battle, the cluster bomb, which arrived the next days, more than 21 used in each day in this small town. If you see the last one on the left picture for the one from the American this very famous crime in the media, when the driver for this military plane asked his control plan to, there is civilian with a flag they want to go or to move. What I should do? They tell him, crash them. This movie on the YouTube, and anyone can show this or to confirm from our information. And if this movie remove it, we have the original also. During this battle, we cannot arrive to the cemetery of Fallujah out to take all the bodies of the died people or killed. What we should do, we transform the stadium of football to be our cemetery, as we see in the picture in the center. If we look for all the time what we confirmed and we write for the United Nations, all this confirmed there was violation and crimes against the international humanitarian law, also against Geneva Conventions or the international human rights law. But where is the justice? Before we go for the second battle in November 2003, I want to stress one thing. My people, they know that the peace protocol agreed with American after the first battle was not real, because there is not any international guarantees to protect us, because American each day they change the strategy and was all this crime or this protocol only to take more time until they prepare themselves to return to crush Fallujah or to destroy Fallujah after start to be Najaf city, also similar Fallujah, as symbol for resistance or independent from occupation. When from the reason also was the big unity between Shia and Sunni, especially between Fallujah and the southern city. Therefore, my people, when they start to expose this strategy or the new crime, massacres against Fallujah, they go to speak with dialogue, peaceful with Iraqi government, was with Dr. Abidallah. In this time, was the representative for the government of Abidallah, the former defense minister Hazem Shailan. They arrived in the end for peaceful protocol. The Iraqi defense ministry asking 3 days before signing this protocol to have more discussion inside the Iraqi Prime Minister Council before they signed this protocol. After 2 days, he called Fallujah delegation to tell them, America refused this protocol, and we don't have any ability to protect you. Go to do something for you. We arranged another meeting between Fallujah delegation and the special representative of United Nations in Iraq, Mr. Ashraf Ghazi, to tell him, look, we have a big crime coming to destroy our city, try to do something. He write letter to Mr. Kofi Annan. Mr. Kofi Annan, all we ask, no, he write open letter to President Bush, Tony Blair, Dr. Abidallah. All they refuse this peaceful letter, and they don't allow for United Nations to go to do something or to be mediator for dialogue or to be guarantees for any agreement will be, as well as they, former Prime Minister of British, Tony Blair, he lying when he go to the Parliament, British Parliament, to tell him, these people refuse the peace and we should take the weapons from them by force. And therefore he take the permission to remove 5,000 soldiers from Basra, around Baghdad, from the side of Fallujah to participate in this massacres. Now, what happened in this battle in November 2004? We have many evidence about, firstly, the white phosphor, especially the admission of, admitted for the speakerman of Pentagon in 2006 with the BBC channel, when he said, we use this against insurgent, not against the civilian, and all of us, we know this type of weapons don't do any distinguish between any humanitarian life. The second thing, we have testimonies for many soldiers, especially they show in the Italian program for Rai News 24. If we look for many of them, how many people died, how many people affected in the first one or in this second one, there is no real estimation or there is no any ability to do real accountable. 150 killed, only the bodies killed was in the American side. They take it and they keep it in the freezer to protect or to keep the potato beside Fallujah. The humanitarian aid, they collect 700 killed person in 6 quarters from 28, one inside Fallujah. If we look for the real, how many 300,000 internal displaced person. What was the result for this? 26,000 destroyed partially, 3,000 destroyed completely, 70 masjid or mosque, 50 school, food destroyed for the road system, 50% destroyed of the water for humanitarian use, 70% destroyed for the civil or sewage system. This is from the Iraq government reports. One from the soldier, sorry, before we came, Americans, Marines, we have the testimonies of him as recorded and also as the rating. He confirmed that they use inside this many strategies, not only to research the fighters, but also to prevent any losing any soldier, like reconnaissance by fire, which is open the fire on anything before you go inside, even the civilian, not civilian, open the fire until to don't hear any sound, anything inside, and after you can go. Another strategy using bulldozer to clean the houses. And he also admit about there is one case in front of him when they used this bulldozer to destroy some houses, and there was 2 fighters with 1 children, and they don't do anything to save the children before they do this crime. Now we came for the, well, as Mr. Busby said, in 2006 and 2007, my organization started the Fallujah Hospital to collect more evidence or more data about the situation of health after we start to hear many stories about this problem. We succeeded from this data coming from the Fallujah Hospital, signed by 3 doctors, official report, which we sent to WHO, and they don't reply until now, and there is many bodies inside the United Nations don't care, but there is a political control prevent them to look or to investigate. We found, for example, in 2006, there is near 6,000 unknown dangerous cases. 70% was cancer abnormalities between 1 day until 11 years 12 years old. For the half year of 2007, there was more than near to 2,500 unknown dangerous cases, 50% between children. Most of these abnormalities was congenital spiral cord abnormalities, congenital renal abnormalities, undiagnosed cases, brain tumor. Many of them, as Mr. Busby said, we don't know which type of the violation or which type of the situation. Therefore, I'm very happy after Mr. Busby report try to clear for us some of this. I want to finish my speak about one thing. We want only the justice for my people. We need only all the people, not only Fallujah or Iraq, but also American before us to know the truth, because they have also the same problem, not only in Fallujah, this effect. And thank you very much for all.
Thank you very, very much, Muhamed. We have a very short amount of time we can stay here because another organization, Liberation, has this room at 1 o'clock. They are going to be talking about, I believe, communities under distress. I had wanted to see if Ditta Rietuma, who's from the International Foundation for Research on radiation risks, could make a few comments. It'll have to be extremely brief because we have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Do I put this on?
Yeah,
How?
You push a button there.
the red button. There, it's on.
Okay, hello. I do give my deepest condolences to the people who have suffered so much. And we have to realize that this affects everybody of us. Because these uranium particles, nanoparticles, they do go around the world with airflows, they rain down, and time is very short to change the culture of security in the world. And the good point to start to change it is here in United Nations. And I personally come from Latvia and Sweden. We are also nations under enormous economical distress. And so there are many levels of stress in the world that we can solve if we restructure the culture, the security culture. And we need this process started today. So I would really like to ask you people to approach me, how we can structure this up, the nations, so that Latvian and Swedish nations can work with Iraqis and Israelis who are getting infertile. It's a question of years when the whole Israel is infertile. Wake up! This is United Nations. We have to act. And we are creating a new structure that will be the structure of the system of the world has to change. So from the pyramidal to the sun system structure, where one of the rays is love. And if you don't love our nations, you cannot have impact on them. You can't have agreements on our nations. So where is the heart of United Nations? Where is it? Where can I meet it? Where can I look in its eyes? Do you know it? Anybody? Okay, this is the same answer. Nobody knows where is the heart of United Nations. I will be the heart then. And please approach me and we will create a new culture of security. Thank you.
With that, I'm afraid we have to close. The other group is outside the door, and as a courtesy to fellow NGOs, we have shortened their time. Thank you very much for your attendance. We hope to have additional conferences like this in upcoming Human Rights Councils. Thank you.